Hello, and welcome to the Sober Butterfly podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Michael.
Hi, my name is Micheal 6 Muldoon, and I am very excited to be here.
Michael 6 Muldoon, also known as Magic Mike. No, I'm kidding. Only I
Yes.
call you
Okay.
Magic Mike.
Only you. Wow. Okay.
But that sounds
People
crazy.
are gonna have questions.
You guys start calling him Magic Mike, so I'm not the only one. Anyway, Michael, you are a magician, hence the nickname Magic Mike. You are also an educator. You are a TEDx speaker. You are a sober friend. You are just a long laundry list of many things. Do you feel like that accurately describes you? Is it a good intro?
It's a start.
It's just scratching the surface. So today I'm really excited to have you on because, first of all, also just FYI, you're the first male guest we've had on the show. How does that make you feel?
Wow. I feel honored. I hope I do it justice. Because
That's going to be his greatest accolade after
I think
this
is going to be the top of the resume now.
So I want to talk a little bit about your experiences, obviously in sobriety, what it's like to be a magician and educator, because I feel like that is a less common profession, but super cool. And yeah, let's get into it. Let's start from the beginning. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Let's go all the way back to the very start. No, you're a true New Yorker. So tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in Queens, being born and raised in New York, and how some of those earliest formative memories have shaped who you are today.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Queens, New York. So shout out to Queens, my Queens people listening in. I grew up originally in Maspeth, and now I live in Ridgewood, which apparently is the fourth coolest place in the world, according to Time Out in New York.
Who knew?
I don't know where they got that from. Someone paid a lot of money for that. That was not.
Hey, you're supposed to plug for you're supposed to go hard.
It's a great neighborhood, but fourth coolest in the world, who are they lying to? Come on, stop it. But yeah, I grew up in Queens, born and raised. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I lived in Maspeth when I was a child. Eventually, we had to leave because my house burnt down.
That's crazy.
When I was 11 years old. And that's kind of where everything started. And I think in many ways, it kind of led me to this very moment. And I say that because, well, let me tell you the story of the house burning down.
Yeah, we need to know more about your house burning down.
I was in the basement when my brother and his best friend was sleeping over at the time. And we hear beeping upstairs. And I'm like, all right, let me go. Well, I say let me go, but they told me to go because I was the youngest one there. So you go check the alarm.
Of course.
So I go check on the beeping, and my father is in bed. It was early morning, and he's like, "I'll just check the hallway and let me know what's up." I open the door, and you just see smoke. You can't see anything, and the people upstairs are running up and down the stairs. And I guess they were taking stuff and trying to get it out of the house.
Wow.
And I go back in and tell my father, I'm like, hey, I can't see in the hallway because there's smoke everywhere. And then he tells me to get out of the building. So I go across the street, and then he tells everybody else that was in the house. And that's sort of where this story begins. My mother wasn't in the house at the time, so my brother goes to get her. And she tells me all the time the story. Like, she was like, yeah, I saw him, and I was like so confused because he came to my job, and then he wasn't wearing shoes.
Wow. Like, he literally ran out of the house.
Yeah. I mean, we just took what you just get out. That's exactly what happened. So she had to come back, and we had to deal with that. And the entire second floor was wiped out. So it's a 2-family house. So the house itself was destroyed, and we had to get out of there. And
where did you go? Like, where after your house is destroyed, where do you live? And
so
how do you pick up from there?
Yeah, at the same exact time. This is, I guess, I don't know the full story to what exactly was happening, but my parents actually separated this time.
Oh, okay.
So my mother takes me and 3 boys. She has 4 boys, but she takes 3 of us. And one of my brothers was already out of the house at the time. She takes us to my aunt's house, and we end up sleeping in a basement on cots until we could save enough money to find a place to live. She slept on this oversized chair, and I had a cot, and sometimes my other brother would sleep on a pool table. It's just what we had available to sleep. We did that for a few months until my mother could save the money to find a place to live, which ended up bringing us to Ridgewood, New York.
Okay. So you have this early formative memory of your house literally burning down.
Yeah.
And you're dealt to live with the wreckage of that. So what was the aftermath? So your parents separated. You're now living somewhere completely different. And I'm assuming you maybe had to go, life looked different for you. So what did it look like, and how did you cope with that change?
You lose your friends. And I think that was the most difficult thing. And I didn't cope with it very well. And I say that because I ended up struggling in school, which is ironic considering I'm a teacher. So I lost all my friends. This is, pre cell phones and texting and social media as being a thing. So all the friends that I used to play sports with or whatever the case was, I don't see them anymore because it lives too far. And I had to continue going to my middle school at this time by taking a bus that I was not familiar with and just travel back and forth. These all new things, not seeing my father all the time. All of this had an impact. And it showed because I have report cards from middle school where I have 55, 55, 55.
Right.
I've gotten to like arguments and like incidents with teachers.
Yeah.
And then eventually I was pretty much I don't know if I was kicked out or my mother transferred me out of the school, but I had an incident with a teacher and I had to leave the school. So whether that was my mother's choice just to move to a closer school or whether the school forced me out,
Right.
I don't fully recall. But it didn't change because I ended up going to a closer middle school, which was nice because it was closer. But then again, now I don't know anybody. I don't have any friends there.
Right.
So that's going to be there. And then eventually when I go into high school, all of these things are leading to me cutting school a lot at this time.
I see.
So I wasn't a good student, which usually you think, oh, teacher, you must have been a scholar. That wasn't the case. I actually have a letter from my high school that says Micheal is a danger to others.
Oh my gosh. It's so crazy because like sitting next to you, this version of you today, like I would never think that was your history or your past.
A lot of people tell me that, but that's, those are the incidences that made me who I am today, right? You go through these experiences and you start to get this understanding. And it maybe it was all meant to be. And I think that's a crazy thing to say, but it led me in many ways to magic because now that I wasn't seeing my friend all the time, one day he invites me to go to a Mets game. And he's like, I got tickets to the Mets game. Let's go watch the game. So we ended up taking the bus to, it was MetLife in that's Jersey.
Wait, I don't know.
City Field or Shea Stadium.
Are you sure it's not called MetLife?
MetLife, no, not even close, but Shea. And we go watch the Mets and we're coming back and he's like, yo, like I know this funny store. Let's go to this place. So we hop off the bus on Queens Boulevard and Grand Avenue is the location, which is ironic because I teach very close to that now. And there's a store called Rogue Magic and Fun Shop. And we go in and he's like, oh, he's trying to buy some practical jokes. And the guy at the counter shows me a magic trick and I'm absolutely blown away. And I was like, what in the world? And he was like, I was like, can you tell me how it's done? He's like, no, we don't give away our secrets. And I was like, oh, so like, how do I learn? How do I be a magician? He's like, $5, I can tell you.
Oh my gosh.
Which is ironic, right? We don't give away our secrets, but we'll sell them to you.
Yes. So, that's fair. Everything comes with a price.
Everything comes with a price, yeah. So
except for me. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Snap. Let them know. So I ended up spending my last $10 there because I bought 2 magic tricks.
Okay.
I'm like, and then that's it. I was bit by the bug. I go home. I show my mom these tricks. She freaks out. I'm like, I need more tricks. I need to go back and buy more.
She's like, how much did you spend on this?
Yeah. And they ended up having a show there every Saturday night. So then I started taking the bus there to go see the shows on Saturday night. And I'd pay to watch the show. And then eventually, after being there long enough, I was like, hey, you want to like run the curtains? Like, you want to help out or something? You won't have to pay for the show. And before I knew it, I was ended up working in the magic shop. And how does this all tie into school? Well, I was cutting school a lot in high school. And I would cut school to go work at the magic shop.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And the magic shop was really this interesting place. It was like a safe haven because it really took kids that you wouldn't expect and put them all in one place. There was gang members, drug dealers, kids who were doing great in school, all in this one place coming together over this idea of magic. And it was fascinating to be a part of that.
It's an interesting cast of characters.
Yeah, there's actually, ironically, Bacardi did a video about the store and some of us, and it was called...
you cannot use that word.
I'm sorry.
I'm joking.
I just sinned. Oh, my goodness.
Bacardi did not sponsor this video.
They did not.
Continue. But there was Bacardi did a video, you said?
Yeah, so what they did is they picked 25 of the most irrepressible spirits in the world.
Irrepressible spirits?
Yeah.
Wow.
There's all kinds of stories. There was a guy who built like a roller coaster in his backyard for somebody. I forget. It was like
I can't help it. I'm sorry, Michael, but irrepressible spirits... Funny because Bacardi represses people's spirit.
Oop.
Sorry. Continue.
And
so
it's a great video. You want to watch it?
It's a great video. I'll plug it.
Like you search like Bacardi Magic Man, I think it's called, the Magic Man. It's interesting, and it gives you a little insight into the shop. And in many ways, it saved our lives. And magic, in many ways, saved my life. And it's just that kind of weird situation. At the same time, my best friend, who was a former gang member, was presenting at a magic conference. He was competing in a competition, and he was doing an act where he talks about like how magic saved his life from being in a gang. And in the audience was a man named Tom Werner, who was the founder of an organization called Magicians Without Borders.
Wow.
So he meets Devante. He says, I work with these kids in El Salvador. We do gang prevention there. You should come join and speak to these kids. So maybe fate had its way that day, bringing that all together. And I eventually would meet Tom, and I'd start traveling with Magicians Without Borders, and I would go on to be the vice president of the organization. And for those who don't know, Magicians Without Borders is a nonprofit organization that uses magic to entertain, educate, and empower at-risk youth all over the world. And it's a beautiful organization. Tom is an incredible human being, and they're doing incredible work. So I served 2 years as the vice president, and it's still something that I hold near and dear to my heart. And I did a lot of trips to El Salvador, some to Guatemala, and that's my magic journey.
That's beautiful. I kind of want to unpack some of that. So, as a magician, there's always this allure, right, that draws people in, which is the magic, which is
Mhm.
the way that you can elude people in
Mhm.
terms of like distorting truth in ways. How has being a magician changed the way that you view everything, or does it change the way that you view
It
anything?
does, 100%. It does. It really shaped my perspective in many ways. Like there is a way of thinking like a magician, and everything I see, I think of through the lens of a magician. And one of my a friend of mine, Joshua J, wrote a great book called How Magicians Think, which is like what is the processing like when we're doing tricks, and what tricks do we pick, and that kind of thing. But I think on a deeper level, there's also like this processing that happens when we're performing or analyzing a person, and you have to know your audience. You have to be able to see the person in front of you and pay attention to where their eyes are looking, and control their attention, and use all that to your advantage in order to create the illusion that you're trying to create. And magicians historically have long been at the forefront of technology and communication, and using all of these things to create the best illusion that they can. There's a lot of technology that's coming out now, like stuff that magicians have been using for years.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if I can give away all those secrets, but one of the things that magicians use for a specific trick that I can't say because I think you'll be able to connect the dots, they're now using in Major League Baseball to communicate with the pitchers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's kind of cool. So so that perspective of always seeing where technology is going, where the world is going, and how we can use those things to our advantage to create these illusions, understanding human beings and the way they think, and how to control attention. These are all methods that we're using to ultimately create a great experience for people. But it also shapes my worldview and how I see things. When I go into education, like, I don't know, I don't see it like a normal teacher. It's not just about being here and teaching kids. It's like, how do I make this entertaining? How do I create experiences? How do I create moments of wonder that they can remember for the rest of their life?
I love that.
Yeah.
So you're igniting passion by almost like through this performative aspect of tapping into your work as a magician.
Yeah.
I'm curious, speaking of performative measures, I think a lot of performers feel the pressure to perform sometimes and then use alcohol as a means to give their best performance. How did you use alcohol, or did you use alcohol when you were performing your magic tricks, or being in that industry and having an inside look in that world? Do you feel that people did use alcohol
All the
to
time.
perform?
All the time. It was, yeah, I mean, all the time. People were either having drinks before their show or after their show. Like you have a drink before, just to take the nerves off before you go on stage. Or you're just hanging out with other magicians and you have a few drinks at dinner before showtime, and then you go do the show. I don't know if that's necessarily healthy. I mean, it's not healthy, but
Was it like normed? Like, do you feel like it
yeah,
was
no,
almost like a societal expectation?
yeah, 100%, like 100%. Like it's. I can't even think of now that I think of like magicians that I'm, friends with, or that I haven't spoken to a while, that I see before they go on show, like, oh, having a drink before show, or drinking, backstage before the show starts. And I think that's very common, and probably in most performances I can imagine. But I've definitely seen that throughout magic. Being in the magic shop, we're bunch of kids that were hanging out in the streets when came together in this magic shop. I was introduced at an earlier age, like 16, 17, to alcohol, thankfully around people who weren't doing bad things per se, so I felt safe at the very least, kind of in a controlled environment, I guess. But yeah, I know it's everywhere, especially in performances and the magic industry. Yeah, I can think of some great magicians too, and I had some friends that were really phenomenal magicians, and alcohol was just winning, and it was throwing them off their game. And I can only imagine how far they could have gone if it wasn't for alcohol being involved somewhere in there. And I can think of some major names in magic that if any magicians were listening, they would be like, "Oh yeah, I know that guy." And it's sad because they probably could have been so much more if it wasn't for the alcohol being involved.
Interesting. And so you sort of transitioned I don't want to say away from the magic because you still are a magician,
Yeah.
more full time into the classroom and into education.
Hmm.
What inspired that transition for you?
Oh man, this is good. So, as I mentioned, I wasn't a good student, and one day I'm cutting school because that's what I did, and and I
Just a
was
normal
just a
day.
normal day. It was like probably like a Tuesday or something, and I'm working in the magic shop,
Hmm.
and we open like early that day because usually the store opened at like 1, but I think that day opened at like 12. And this guy comes in and he's asking, for some recommendations on what tricks he should buy. I show him a few tricks. He picks the ones that he likes, and at some point he turns to me and goes, "Hey, like, what school do you go to?" And I go, "Oh, I go to Grover Cleveland High School." And he's like, "No way, I work there."
Oh,
No, and he looks at me through squinted eyes and he goes, "It's a little early to be out of school, isn't it?" It's like noon on a weekday.
like, but wait, why are you
And then I
here?
looked at him, I was like, "It's a little
Like,
early to be out of work. Like, what are you, why are you here?" And we ended up having a great conversation. And I told him about how I hated science class, and he gave me the same science teacher every year, and she was driving me crazy.
hmm.
And then he told me about how we love magic. And he actually made an agreement with me, and he said, "If you meet me each day on my lunch break, I'll teach you science for half the period, and then you can teach me magic for the other half."
Wow,
And
that's
he used it, and it
crazy.
actually got me into school for a pretty good amount of time before I started cutting again.
Hmm.
But one of the things that was difficult about being in school is that I wasn't like a dumb kid. Like, I was a smart enough kid that I was in class, I'd get my work done, and then I sit there with my cards in my hand, and my teacher would yell at me, tell me how I'm never going to amount to anything, how I'm wasting my time with those deck of cards, put them away,
Wow.
and like just basically crushing my dreams that I had of being a magician. But here's this one guy who believed in me, and not only believed in my dreams of being a magician, like he embraced it and said, "Hey, come teach me."
Yeah.
And that's that. How many times do you hear teachers asking students to teach them something? That's
Right.
rare.
Exactly.
So, he gave me this self confidence, this belief in me. And so that's one of the aspects to why I became a high school teacher, because I wanted to be him. I wanted to be the teacher that can see kids and understand their passions and have them believe in themselves so that they can reach those things too.
That's beautiful.
And on the other side of that is like with Tom Vernon, when we were doing Magicians Without Borders, we would raise money and pay for kids to go to school, like high school. In El
Hmm.
Salvador, you have to pay to go to high school, college, and all that kind of stuff. And we're raising money to put these kids through school. I mean, I did end up doing my associates in business, but like I saw we were paying for these kids to do their schooling. I was like, maybe I should like finish and do more schooling, like be the example for these kids.
Mm.
So I ended up deciding to finish my bachelor's degree. And while that was happening, my mother worked in a school, and she was like, "Hey, we need a school aide. It's a light job. It's only a few hours a day,
Hmm.
but you can do this since you're not going to be traveling doing the magic anymore. You can do this to
Hmm.
make some income while you're going to school," which I ended up doing. And other teachers in the school were just like, "Oh, these kids love you." Usually, like they push me like, "You'll be a great teacher. You should really consider this." And eventually, I was like, "You know what? Let me do this." So like I got pushed by somebody else. Actually, gave me a plan. There's a gentleman, Eric Checo, who I work with, great guy. He was like, "Dude, like I'll just tell you what I did. Like I did this, and I ended up going
Hmm.
to the Teaching Fellows, which is the program, and that's how I met you."
So you met me.
So everything comes full circle. Like life doesn't happen by accident.
Hmm.
So and that's how I went to teaching. So I became a teaching fellow, studied political science, and then ended up becoming a special education teacher. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
At this point in life, what was your relationship like with alcohol?
It wasn't anything like crazy. Like it wasn't to the point that.
I'm imagining you're like mid-20s.
Yeah, well, this is right. So I mean, I got into teaching at like I think I started teaching at 30. I
Okay.
was a school aide at like 27, 28 because I was coming back later.
Yeah.
Definitely with like traveling and doing magic. There's a lot of alcohol involved. You go to any magic convention, they have these major magic conventions. You find all the magicians hanging out at the bar,
Hmm.
and it's just so normalized to always be drinking and working on magic.
Hmm.
So during those times when I was hanging out with magicians, there was a lot of drinking going on. Um, and then when I moved into education, it wasn't so crazy. I mean, I think just normal stuff. But no, the normal is not okay, right?
Mm.
This idea of normal alcohol usage is not okay
Right.
because there's no such thing as normal alcohol usage. It's legit just poison. Right?
Right.
If you're ingesting poison over and over again, it's never going to be okay. And the I guess the turning point for me, it wasn't necessarily like this major bad thing happened. Like I can definitely think of incidents of like when I was drinking, it's like, oh, that was stupid. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that.
Hmm.
Like that regret, waking up hungover, wasting your days,
Hmm.
having headaches. Um, but there was a point in my life where I said to myself, I want to be the best version of me,
Mm.
in whatever
Yep.
capacity that is.
Yep.
And to do that, you have to act with integrity to yourself. So that means you have to say something and then act in accordance with that. Make your words match your actions for you. not for other people. And I think I was fortunate in that sense that it really came down to me. And I think, other people struggle and they try to change for other people because they feel bad for the way they acted or said something to someone or did things like that. So they go down that route. I just really wanted to be a better version of myself, and I didn't like who I was when I drank. Not that I was even that bad. It just wasn't in alignment with the person that I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important thing to ask yourself. Is like, who are you, and who do you want to be, and what does the best version of you look like? And then if you create this blueprint of this is the best Micheal, and these are the things that show that this Micheal is being the best him,
Right.
I can wake up each morning and act in accordance with that.
I think that's integral. Like, this idea of wanting to be the best version of yourself and visualizing what that looks like, I think is important, right? But the added piece that is often overlooked is what actions must this person do in accordance to becoming that version of self.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to just, have a vision of what this person looks like and does, and it's a completely different thing to actually do the work.
Yeah.
And show up and do the work and make mistakes along the way and fail and then pick yourself back up and realize that, like, just because you messed that up doesn't mean that it's over. You just have to take every day as it comes to, once again, keep working towards that version of self.
Yeah. And you say something so important there, this idea of success. And I say that because one of my students recently did an interview with me. She interviewed me for English project she was doing in class. And one of the questions she asked me is like, if you had like one thing people should know about being successful, what would it be? And I try to be very honest with my students. Like, I had to explain that to be successful and success itself is ugly. It is not pretty. And I think we're often sold the illusion that it's going to be a beautiful thing and I'm going to just try and I'm going to make all this money and all these dreams are going to happen. No, it's dirty. It's ugly. You have to grind it out. You have to wake up every morning and make difficult choices. I think even Colonel Sanders from KFC was rejected over 100 times before he ever sold his recipe.
Yeah.
I mean, most people would give up after like the 5th no or 7th no, maybe even the 20th no. Get to 99 no's and you still keep going. Yeah, because it's ugly. But what you don't see that. You just see all the KFCs everywhere and you see Colonel Sanders everywhere. And you're like, oh, it must have been easy. But it's not. And if you're choosing to be successful in something, going into it, anticipating it's going to be difficult, it's going to make your life a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because if you think it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows, it's not.
I love that. A quick connection to sobriety there. This illusion of what sobriety looks like, even. Like, I think I try to be mindful as someone that has a platform that tries to, on one hand, showcase all the beauty and positivity in the ways in which my life has changed and transformed for the better in sobriety. Like, that is true. But at the same time, the work that went beneath the surface, like the pain and the agony and like the uncomfortability of what that process looked like in becoming this version of self was not pretty, to your point. Like, the success of me getting sober was not a linear path. It was very much like trial and error. I failed at certain points. I've had many day ones. I didn't nail it my first try. And I think, like, to your point, being transparent with other people and forthcoming with your story, right? Like, so with your student, for example, like giving that very like clear definition of success being messy is messaging to her that like it's not going to always look the way you think or the illusion of what you think success looks like, because I think so many people use that as almost like their guiding light. And then when they themselves go through the process and it doesn't feel the way that it's supposed to look or what they thought it would look like, they give up.
Yeah.
And that's the part that like I think less people talk about in life, in sobriety, in whatever, however you want to define success for yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, it is ugly, it is messy, and it doesn't always work the first time you try it or the 100th time that you try it. So
I think Mike Tyson says that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Oh,
that's get ready for those punches. Know they're coming. No matter what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, it's going to be ugly. And get ready for that battle. And you have to be persistent and you have to keep at it. And knowing why you're doing it and what you're after and checking in with yourself every once in a while to make sure I'm on track to what I'm going to do is going to be so valuable in that. For me, it was I was just checking it like, what do I have to do today to be the best version of me? And then tomorrow I start again. What do I have to do today to be the best version of me?
I like the emphasis of like today, like this, like in the moment present, because I think we can get overwhelmed if we try to think about all the long-term things that we have to do to get to this version of self. It's like, no, in this moment, like what's the bite-sized action step that you can take that's in alignment to becoming this person.
Yeah. And you're redefining the best you every day. And you understand that it's not going to be the same. Even like here, like I'm not the person today that I was yesterday.
Right.
And tomorrow, I'm not going to be the same person I am today.
Mm.
I'm going to leave here with something, a conversation that we had, whether it's before this or during this. I'm going to be thinking about that. And it's going to change my behavior in some way, or the way I word something. So we're constantly evolving. And we're
well, I don't know if everyone's constantly evolving. I think that you are taking the approach and you're having a mindset that is open to change and growth. But that's the point I'm trying to think. I think that is uncomfortable for people. And to
it sucks.
I think a lot of people prefer this sometimes, just stay how they know themselves to be, even if that person or version of themselves is sick, because it's just like easier that way.
You have to face the truth, and that's where it gets difficult, right? Because you have to be honest with yourself and others, and that is where the challenge is. This idea of like, when people do these 31-day challenges, I'm not going to drink, or in January, or whatever the case is, drink. Then they go back to drinking in February, and they say, "Look, I did it.
Yeah,
I was able to do it. I proved my point. I proved to the world that I can stop drinking." Well, that's an illusion.
Yeah,
because you didn't stop drinking; you paused drinking, and there's a distinction there, and distinctions matter.
Yeah.
So you didn't prove to anybody that you can stop drinking. You just proved that you can hang for a few days and not drink, and then you go right back to it. The moment there's an opportunity that you feel good about yourself, that you sold yourself on this illusion, then you start pursuing it. Yeah. And that's where thinking like a magician comes in, right? It's understanding the illusions that we're telling ourselves, why we're telling ourselves these illusions, and trying to get to the actual truth of it.
So I think the honesty piece that you mentioned is integral. And just moving into, well, what was some of your reasons for wanting to quit drinking? I feel like you tapped into this, but I'd like to hear a little bit more. Like, do you feel like, because it sounds like you weren't like a problematic drinker per se, even though we can both agree that alcohol is a problem.
Yeah, and I've always had everyone has those stupid moments where like, I shouldn't have done that, I shouldn't have said that, and thankfully nothing.
No rock bottom moment.
Yeah, so nothing so crazy where like I need an intervention or something. Thankfully, especially considering I come from a family of alcoholics, that's it could have been far worse. I think also part of that was in the back of my head too, like you really have to be careful because that's it's in your blood, unfortunately. The big changes were, like I said, like what is the best version of me, and I wasn't in shape. We had COVID times where I put on a ton of weight, and I was like, well, that's not who I am. Right? That's who I am in this moment, but that's not who I am in general. And I wanted to be healthy. I have some back issues that I have to be worried about. So losing weight's going to be beneficial for that. And if I really want to be successful, right, I have my own drives, my own motivations. I really want to like impact the world and share ideas that are valuable and contribute to the world and leave some kind of contribution to the world that makes this world a better place. And to do that, you have to really be acting in a way that's aligned to those dreams. And then I had to ask myself, well, what is the value of alcohol for me? What does value do for me? What does alcohol do for me? And really, like nothing. It actually hinders all the things that I thought it was doing. So on one end, it's like, oh, it takes off the nerves, calms my anxiety. But again, that's just an illusion, right? Because is alcohol really removing the anxiety, or is that a Band-Aid, not a solution?
Oh, rhetorical question.
Yeah,
we know the answer to that.
Because then what I should be doing is, well, why do I have anxiety? What is it that's holding me back? What parts am I insecure about myself?
And how do I address the real root causes, like anxiety, for example, without the need to drink? Because as you mentioned, it's just a scapegoat. And then usually the thing that you're using to self-medicate or self-soothe exasperates the condition even more. So for example, if you're using alcohol for anxiety, like, oh, I want
it increases it.
Right, it increases it. Like, it's just like, oh, if I don't have it now, I feel like, oh my God, I can't function. I can't socialize. I can't be this extroverted, great version of myself without it. And it's like, no, what can you supplement in place of that? Or how can you tap into it? A friend of mine says that like a lot of the things that we think we're using alcohol for, we actually have within ourselves. We just have to learn how to unlock it. So it's just a matter of like retuning or fine-tuning how to actually be that version of yourself. So if you're using it to be this extroverted person, well, you are that person. It's just a matter of like extracting that version of yourself without using alcohol.
It's already in you, obviously.
Exactly.
Right? Like, so
if you're able to be that person.
So one of the great things you can do is find passions that allow you to do that thing. For me, going on stage is that, right? Like, I mean, without drinking.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
I just did a performance for my school Friday night, and it was great. And it felt so being so good up on stage, and I get to be a little crazy and energetic. And I don't get to do that all the time, but in those moments on stage, that's where I really get that thrill, because I have these passions that I can then take the things that I'm missing or looking for in my life and find healthy ways to access those things and tap into those things and to work on those things. So one of those things that, like, let's say you do have like, oh, it helps me be more social or whatever the case is. That's a great time to learn things to be more social.
Yeah.
You can be a magician. Okay, maybe you can't be a magician. I mean, you could. You can join my YouTube channel. I do teach some card tricks there. It's not a shameless plug. This is actually a recommendation.
It's a great conversation starter, right?
Like, learn some basic card tricks. I teach self-working card tricks, we call them, which is like, you just got to remember the steps. You don't have to have like any dexterity or sleight of hand. You can go to my YouTube channel, learn a few of those tricks, and then now you can have a conversation with somebody and open up a conversation and do so in a way that's healthy. You don't have to rely on alcohol to do that. So,
it's beautiful.
Yeah, and it obviously doesn't have to be magic. That's just my thing. It could be your thing too. You're welcome to join me. Whatever the thing is for you. I know people like dance and Zumba and all these kind of things are going to be beneficial. Joining a book club with shared passion. You can get all the things that alcohol gives you, but you just have to look deep within yourself and ask yourself, what is it that you really need?
Right.
And I think, it's not easy. And like I said, it's not pretty, but it has to happen, right? Like, you have to make that jump.
Because if not, what's the alternative?
Yeah. And then you are living in a world of illusion, right? Alcohol is not reality.
No,
Yeah.
That's the key. I think so many people think that alcohol is the solution without recognizing that it's the problem, and until it becomes a true problem and they're forced to reckon with themselves.
Yeah. And I think most people listen, you can either wait to rock bottom and then you have to deal with yourself.
Yeah.
And it's going to be even uglier than if you just say to yourself, let me deal with it now, and do so because it's my choice.
Yeah.
And that's a scary place to be. I get it. Trust me. I promise you, I know how difficult it is to look at yourself and say, damn, I'm a jackass when I drink, or damn, like, I really don't love myself like that. Like, I feel down.
That actually made me think of something. Like, some people think that alcoholism is a progressive disease, and considering like your shared background that you mentioned about your family, do you feel like that could have been a track or a pathway for you?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, 100%. Because I've seen it with multiple family members, and I've heard stories of family members that was too young to remember meeting. And yeah, that's an easy track to fall into. And what's that saying? Like, you can only be as successful as your 5 closest friends, right? Like, your
immediate circle.
Yeah, your circle matters, and your family's your closest circle in those with the early upbringing, and they're going to have a great influence over you. And then, seeing the negative side effects of alcohol and what that looks like, and making my own mistakes with drinking and just like stupid stuff you would say or do. And you're like, that's not really me. And then all of that is just really because you're afraid to face yourself. I was afraid to just accept who I was as a person. And then I was afraid to like own this idea of being my best self. Take ownership of yourself.
Wow.
Like, what? Like, to say that like I can't be fit and healthy because it's easy to point to everything around you and say, oh, I work too hard. I got work and I got this and all the excuses that we give ourselves. But imagine the power of just taking ownership of your life and saying, oh, yeah, I'm a little chubby, but you know whose fault that is? That's mine.
No, that's the power. That is the
it hurts.
key right there. But yeah, like, taking ownership and responsibility is really challenging for people. And I think the part about removing alcohol, it's like, that's a big crutch for people. That's like, oh, I'm too hungover. Going back to the health thing, like, to work out today. Like, well, what if you're not hungover? Like, what if like you just are now forced to understand that, like, oh, I'm not prioritizing this because I'm not prioritizing this. Like,
you don't want to accept that side, right? Oh, right. It's me. Oh, I could.
It's so easy. Like, how many times, like, even on the Monday, like, work culture period, it's like, oh my God, this weekend, like, I didn't get anything done. I drank too much. And it's just like an accepted excuse.
Listen, it doesn't necessarily change, right? Like, but the question becomes, which one benefits you? Right. Because if you're serving the same purpose, and now let's say you learn magic tricks to do this, and before using alcohol, it's still the same idea. You're still using some kind of tool or vehicle to get to whatever your end destination is. But which one's going to serve you?
Right.
And I recently was watching a video. I just came across a random video on Instagram. This guy was talking about there's 2 columns in life. These are the plus column and there's the negative column. There's the good and the bad. And he said, everything in your life has a cost. And everything you do, every action you take has a cost to it. And it's either going to be a plus towards whatever your goal or dream is, or it's going to be a negative towards.
No gray area.
And literally he goes, nothing is neutral.
Mm.
And that's the part that hit me.
And that's the part that people don't want to accept.
Yeah.
Because it, going back to your point, takes accountability.
Yeah.
It takes personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And it's a hard truth to face.
Yeah.
But sometimes people are not ready to face that truth.
Yeah, 100%.
And alcohol is a great mask to help people distort whether or not it belongs in this column or that column. Like they recognize that it's bad, but there's all this like caveat. But I was drunk. But I am hungover. But everyone was drinking. But what do you want out of your life, and how is this action helping you get there? Is it or is it not?
And never in my life have I sat down with somebody. Like I do some coaching for people in businesses, and I've never in my life sat down with somebody and asked them, what does your dream life include? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Never once did they say to me, can't wait to wake up hungover again. No. Like never once. Like no one's ever put that on their list of dreams or things to do.
No.
And then think to yourself, like, how is alcohol impeding and getting in the way of you reaching the goals and dreams that you have? Now, it may not, and this is where this false idea of neutral comes in, where it's like, well, it's not directly impacting it, but it could definitely be slowing it down.
Thank you. And going back to your reasons, like you want to optimize your life.
Come on, there's no way my brain is operating at 100% capacity when I'm drinking.
No.
Look at the science of it. There's alcohol stays in your system for days. It takes a while to get out. You got to have a hunger for it again.
And it impacts like every body function.
Your sleep. Oh my God, my sleep.
Every major organ.
I had a hard time with sleep in general, and alcohol does not make sleeping any better.
Nope.
And I've seen the illusion of people like, oh, I'm going to have a glass of wine so I can go to sleep. Like, no, it's going to ruin your sleep.
Disrupts your cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. So part of it for me was like, I want to be healthy. I want to lose weight. I want to have healthy sleep. I want to sharpen my mind. And I asked myself, like, what is the value of alcohol for me? And to be honest, there was no real value. And anytime that I can see a value to it, I had to just ask myself, great, okay, so if the value is in the anxiety thing, what can I do to find ways to do that in a healthy way that is beneficial to me, that can then move me into the plus column?
And then like, if you were like, even if it were like, oh, anxiety, it helps me with anxiety. Well, are you going to be codependent on alcohol for the rest of your life to help you through anxiety? Like it's not a long-term solution.
Yeah.
I love that so much. And so wrapping up here, how has your life improved since becoming sober?
Oh, it's incredible. I mean, I sleep way better. I'm way healthier. I think I'm down like 30, 40 pounds already.
That's incredible. Wow. That did not happen
stronger.
For me. I replaced it with sugar addiction.
Oh,
I mean, I'm fine now, but like in the early days of my sobriety.
Yeah, no, it's ups and downs. I think I definitely started with food initially. And then I got really like, I transitioned to systemizing. One of my favorite books is E-Myth Revisited.
E-Myth Revisited.
Yeah, and it's about almost like a franchising model, like how franchising is. And it's about if you have a small business, how to turn it into like this franchise model that's systemized so it can operate and sustain itself.
Autopilot.
The same thing is true for life. The best thing I did recently, I was like, I want to make sure I keep being healthy. I went to Amazon, bought 20 glass containers for meal prep. And now I have these 20 glass containers that are ready to go at any given time. Creating a meal prep plan, like what are the meals that I'm going to prep all the time and what do I have to always keep in my freezer or fridge? Makes life way easier.
I love that. How can you systemize your sobriety? I'm just thinking, what are some ways that I could do that?
That should be a book, by the way.
There's a
that should be your book.
Well, thank you.
Systemizing sobriety.
As if I haven't need another thing to do. But I do want to write a book actually. But yeah, good point, because I'm thinking like there's often this idea of like a sober toolkit, but the toolkit are like tools that you can reach for and not necessarily systems that you can reach for or how you can systemize, because everyone's systems will look different. Yeah. So I do like that. And I'm curious, maybe we'll leave on a cliff note there. Like how can people systemize their sobriety?
Put a cliffhanger for everybody there.
Yeah.
And I just want to correct your language. You are going to write a book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Let's make sure.
I know that. What did I say? I want to write a book. I want to write a book. I'm going to write a book. Yeah. So I appreciate you, Micheal, for coming on and sharing so much of that, so many gems for us to take away and think about. What's next for you? What are you working on?
My next thing is I'll be at South by Southwest EDU. If anyone happens to be listening, and we'll be there in Austin, Texas, doing a workshop. Now my big thing is I'm combining magic and education together and trying to reawaken wonder back in our schools across the country. Potentially, hopefully, going to be, I plan to at least, as long as nothing gets in the way of that for whatever reason, I'm planning to launch a nonprofit called Seek Wonder.
I'm sorry, you're going to.
I'm going to. See, correct. I was waiting for it. I set that one up. I'm going to launch Seek Wonder, which will be seekwonder.org, which will be an organization to bring magic into schools and, like I said, reawaken wonder back in our schools because we need it.
I should coin that too. Reawaken wonder. I love that. Reawaken wonder in our schools.
We need it. That's going to happen. And then other than that, I mean, I'm working on a book at the moment. So specifically for educators, and same idea. How do we get wonder back into schools? And that's kind of where my pathway is taking me, it seems. I'm just trusting the universe and following its guidance.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm excited. And to be honest, like there's, if I had to give any feedback to anybody, like I've always been ambitious. I've always had big dreams. And I'll tell you one thing, like my progress has sped up so much once I stopped drinking. It made such a difference.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Yeah. It's going to speed up your progress in achieving your dreams. You're going to be sharper. You'll be far more motivated. And I promise you, if you have big dreams and big goals, cutting out the alcohol is going to make a huge difference. The first few months are going to suck. I'm going to be honest with you.
Thank you. Give it some time.
But once you get on the other side of that,
yes,
then you'll see it's a snowball effect.
Greatest life hack: giving up alcohol.
Yeah.
I think that's the one common thread. Like, you didn't have some of the addiction issues that I had, but like, no matter where or why people stop drinking, where they come from, or like their purpose for quitting drinking, they all have the same conclusion. Their life is just so much better without it.
Yeah.
I don't think people necessarily who are still drinking know that. So I encourage everyone to like really think.
Yeah.
Consider it for yourself. Treat it like a social experiment.
Yeah, what else? What do you got to lose, right?
Exactly.
I mean, a better life? Oh, how horrible.
I can think of worse things. Okay, Micheal, I'll plug all of your wonderful things. I don't even know what to call it.
Just drop my resume.
I'm just going to drop your resume in the show notes so people can find you. But yeah, follow Micheal. Magic Mike. That's not his name.
You will not find me on anything. Don't Google Magic Mike. Very different show. Very different show.
On Instagram.
Instagram at Six Finger Magic. That's spelled out SIXFINGERMAGIC.
Website
MichealMuldoon.com. MichealMuldon. YouTube.com/magic6, spelled out MAGICSIX. That's the teacher in me right now. Just making sure it's all correct. Yeah, and go to my YouTube, learn some card tricks. Like, listen, that's a great way to meet people if you want to get social. And one way you could do that, like without alcohol, is go learn some really simple card tricks that you can use. And maybe we should do like a team thing. Like that.
I was like, going to say, but I feel like in New York, like, don't go up to random people and just be like, do you want to see a magic trick?
But that's how I started my career. So actually, yes,
do you really? Oh
yes, do that. In the streets? How do you think David Blaine made his whole career off of street magic? Yeah.
I guess.
David Blaine street magic started in New York City.
I would think, I don't know, I'm tainted. I would think it was a scam. I'm like, what are you going to do to me? Why do you need to see? Okay.
It's tough, though. It's brutal, but that's how you build some chops.
And you learn rejection, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of no's to lead to success, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But,
okay, so I take that back. I'm not, what do I know? Okay, go up to strangers and ask them if they want to see a magic trick.
Why not? It's a good way to start. That's your way in, right? So start with that and then find your thing. Trust your passions.
All right, you heard it here.
Thanks everybody. It's been fun. Stay magical.